According to a recent UN report, there are now over 1 million refugees living in Ukraine. We've come to Sloviansk, where there are around 27,000 IDPs living in the area, and we're coming here to talk to a variety of organisations, local and Western NGOs, who will tell us what the situation is, what they're doing to help people here, and what more needs to be done. In April last year, Sloviansk was occupied by separatist forces. 3 months later, they retreated, and the town was left under the control of the Ukrainian army. Since then, residents have struggled to come to terms with the catastrophe that struck their town, and are now having to accommodate repeated waves of people fleeing the fighting in Donetsk, Luhansk, and most recently, Debaltseve.
Мы живем на верхнем этаже, разбила крышу, разбила потолок, и я зашла к соседке, в нее гора вот такая была этого мусора. Повылетали стекла, то, что повылетали, но сердце чуть не... Это такой стресс, что мы просто еще через сутки мы уже бежали оттуда.
Sloviansk Vidrozhenia, meaning Sloviansk Revival, is a locally run charity set up to carry some of the burden of this crisis. Run by a group of hard-working volunteers, the charity provides regular supplies of food and clothes to those in need. With the support of the army, each week the charity hands out bags of groceries to hundreds of refugees.
Ми посильну допомогу, що у нас є, ми більше такими продуктами, фрукти, овочі, котрі у нас трошки як надлишок, тому що ми військовий підрозділ, але бачимо, що якщо воно трошки є надлишок, це щоб не пропало. От ми там з 50 мішків картоплі, це самі перебирали солдати і залучали, щоб то. Ну що можемо, то що нам приносять люди, ми ж не виробляємо, а просто ділимося, ми не так багато їмо, є лишні, будь ласка, щоб люди.
We're in the storeroom for the charity users to hand out food to the refugees. I'd say there have been about 50, maybe 100 refugees that have turned up today, of all ages, very old women to babies and young children. It's really obvious to me that these people really need help. There have been a lot of emotions today from people receiving the food. It's clear that these people are actually completely dependent on what this charity does for them. The charity currently receives no support from the Ukrainian government. They are entirely funded by individual donations and, most importantly, the church, which also plays a major role in supporting those fleeing the conflict. 50 kilometers away in the town of Sviatogorsk, around 600 people have sought refuge in the local monastery. IDPs such as this woman are faced with a daily struggle. She arrived here 6 months ago and is one of the few to receive money from the government. She told us that she receives the equivalent of £23, but that the payment of this is sporadic.
Сколько это приблизительно в месяц?
Ну, бывает 2, вот так вот, 3-4 месяца. Так, ну, в день может помочь, а так вот нет.
We weren't actually given the blessing to film in the monastery, but I've talked with the high priest and he has told us that there are 300 beds for 600 IDPs. These IDPs have come from Sloviansk, Donetsk and most recently Debaltseve. A lot of them have experienced serious trauma and the monastery is doing what it can to help them overcome that. The monastery itself gives them food and accommodation. Anyone is welcome here. There are only 3 rules. The first one is that you can't smoke, you can't drink, and women and men must live separately. Another vital source of support for IDPs in Ukraine is that of the few Western NGOs stationed here. We spoke to Andreas Kutepas, a project coordinator from Médecins Sans Frontières, about the organization's work in the area.
These 1 million internally displaced populations are completely cut off from the system. And we are trying to provide medical care to them through mobile clinics. The idea is simple. We have a vehicle with a doctor, a nurse, and a small but efficient quantity of drugs. And we are doing the diagnosis, and we are providing drugs for a period of at least 1 month.
So your organisation has dealt with a lot of cases of trauma. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
This was a normal European country. People had their lives, had their jobs, had their families. Everything was going normally. And suddenly there is a war. People that had to flee their houses because they have been shelled. The next day they were refugees inside their own country. This means that all their structure of reality has collapsed. And these people now, they are maybe safe, but without job, without any future, and without any support from anybody. And this is a big trauma for them.
Could the Ukrainian government do more to help the people here?
Of course they could do more. Both sides they could do more, not only the Ukrainian government, but also the separatist side. They could do more in helping us with administrative procedures. They can simplify. It's a country with quite complicated administrative procedures, and it would be great if we could have some facilitation on that, let's say.
Ukraine's notorious red tape, difficult even in peacetime, seem to be making things much worse for those swept up in the crisis. Some refugees, like Yelena, are still waiting to be registered officially as an IDP so that they can start receiving money from the government.
Не, ну нам Чехия помогала, было вот 4200 мы получили, вроде бы еще, да. Ваучеры выдавали нам, 2 карточки, вот кушать брали, ездили, но все равно так. Пока еще нету, тут только что только документы переделываю, целая папка документов, вот это вот что делаю в основном. Да, ну уже 2-я неделя, чтобы печать поставить. Сейчас покажу вам. Вот это справка переселенца, которую надо делать, чтобы получать детские, ну потом переоформить и получать на ребенка там.
So we've just talked with Liana and her family, and she's just shown us these documents. These are all the documents that you need if you're an IDP in this area. And she's actually still waiting to get an official document which says that she is a refugee, that she needs support. And so right now she's actually stuck in the lurch because she has absolutely no support. She's got no money, she's got no job, and life, she said, is very difficult. But she says that it's much better that there is no shooting and no bombs, and that life is a little bit calmer. This is the first time that Ukraine has had to face this kind of emergency. With the country in chaos, the government is failing to provide adequate support for displaced people. Because of this, the people here are dependent on local volunteers, Western NGOs and the church.
But this simply isn't enough. With such a fragile system of support in place, these people face uncertain futures, seemingly forgotten by their own government and indeed the world.